Eye of Water is the second full-length album from Tideless, and Tideless is a San Diego area uh, death metal band, a death doom metal band, an atmospheric death doom metal band with shoegaze influences, who have become more of a shoegaze heavy uh, death metal band in recent years. So, uh, describing exactly what this band is and giving you a quick clip of what they are isn't going to necessarily suffice because these are exceptionally long and depressive rock influenced songs that are not traditional death doom metal, and they're not traditional depressive rock influenced gothic metal. It's shoegaze and alternative rock influenced guitar driven music that has it sort of mixes in with funeral doom and death doom metal style in a lot of ways without touching upon gothic rock. And there's just a there's no easy quick way to throw an elevator pitch at you at what this band is, unless it's maybe more of a superficial touch of shoegaze and post rock applied to death doom metal, which is still immediate, urgent, and underground death metal in spirit. So, coming from members of Seraphic Disgust, Xantum, and a band Morbid Gods, which is no longer around, this is a group that started out more in touch with like what the more atmospheric side of the chasm on their later records. They were certainly touching upon early Catatonia, and of course, I love that style. And what they hit upon soon after was influenced by bands like Slowdive, and if you know that much about shoegaze, you'll find that is too superficial of a reference. And we could go into a lot of like early to mid 90s rock music and how that applies to this, but we have to talk about the rift between shoegaze and post rock and early post rock of the early 90s, because I think that is more so what this is in a lot of aspects, but also we could go on a long rant about progressive rock influences, bands like Bedsore and the post Morbus Crohn band Sweven, and how they've touched upon more modern aspects of progressive rock and post rock in their own interpretations of death metal. We could also touch upon some of the early aspects of what Dream Unending were doing on their first record in some sense, but that's more related to a different kind of doom overall, a different side of Peaceville early on. So what this record is does feel original when we look at all these playing fields. It does feel different, and the question is, are they doing anything better or bigger with their second album than they were doing on Adrift in Grief, which was, it still felt raw and underground and death metal in most aspects, and it wasn't fully as indoctrinated into post rock and shoegaze as this record was. So we'll touch upon a brief clip. It's not going to do the album justice, but we'll hit a clip here and get an idea of at least the atmosphere of the record. So it took a while to get to this point of, how could I put this record into perspective? It's a 75-minute record with 5 songs. Most of them are very long. All of them have a little bit of a strong guitar hook or a fading presence to them. And again, the rock influences are very strong, and there's a little bit of gothic death doom in there too. So is it just wuss metal? Is it suck? Is it soft? Is it pretty? In a way, it reminds me of early Lycus, where there was sort of a different atmospheric touch to that work, where there's certainly funeral death doom or death doom metal in there. There's some sense of melody in everything they're doing, but it is long form. These are, anywhere between 6 to 20 plus minutes. I think the closer is 23 minutes. And they really take their time to source what they're doing in with plenty of patience and long exercises out of rhythmic ideas. So there might be some really sharp melodic hooks on this record here and there, but just as well there are large patient movements that take some time to develop. Also, there's death metal here too. There's a pretty solid approach to it. I wouldn't say this is a riff album. I don't think you're going to get, Disembowelment's debut out of this band just yet in terms of the riffs, but it is similarly scattered in its rhythms and ready to turn on a dime if it will work in the effect for the effect of the song. Some of these songs are very driven in one or two big movements, and some of them switch between five different movements in one piece. And the more active pieces are much better. This is a very detailed record, and uh, like Fields of Dawn and some of the other pieces early on really hit the detail quite well. And then when we get to the end of the record, they're sort of spreading out and doing more with less, so to speak. So, um, this really is the type of record where you just have to sit down for 75 minutes, if you will, and let it play out and discover the details. I think the exciting thing about this record is that it still sounds like an underground death metal band, an experimental one that, not exactly Thorgothan, demos or whatever, but still uh, an interesting take on something that just it's different than what you're going to hear elsewhere, and there aren't very many bands that have ever sounded like this. So that's worth something in itself, and it happens to be a good record and one that is very memorable and something new that really caught my ear. So very high recommendation for me. You can read quite a lot more detail on the actual written review, and you can check out the album when it releases this Friday.